afternoon, my lovelies, and welcome to the Queen's Curry Kitchen. You are live in my kitchen in Queens, and we are going to make two dishes today. People often ask me, do you only make plant-based food? Do you only make vegetarian food? No, I don't only make plant-based or vegetarian food. My family is omnivorous, and a lot of my clients are also omnivorous and or flexitarian, whatever you want to call it. And so today I decided to make two dishes, one that involves chicken and the other that involves eggs. So even though I enjoy plant-based food and I love vegetarian food, I also make all kinds of non-vegetarian food. The only thing I do not cook with is beef, not because I don't eat it myself, but because I just don't know how to make it. It was not a meat that we grew up around, so I have no idea how to cook it. I specialize in home-style Indian food, and if you're not following this page, go ahead and do that. There's a lot of lives that I do, and I also have a free chana masala download for you up there on my website, queenscurrykitchen.com. I live in Queens. I make curry in my kitchen. So welcome to my live. My name is Nupur, Chef Nupur, whatever you want to call me. Today we are going to make two dishes, right? So I'm going to make them side by side so we can get the most bang from the buck, right? We're going to do that. One pan is going to be for my chicken and one is going to be for my shakshuka. So my husband's family is from Sindh, which is a province in Pakistan now. It used to be a part of undivided India, and both of these recipes come from my mother-in-law's arsenal, who taught me this really early on as a new bride. I've been married 26 years and I learned to cook Sindhi food from my mother-in-law. Sadly, she left this world 2 months ago, and in an effort to keep her memory alive, I try to cook as many Sindhi dishes as I can. So I've tweaked the recipes here and there. I don't use as much oil as she used to use. I don't make my food spicy, but it's still flavorful, all right? So I'm going to touch upon the ingredients as we get to it. In this pan, we are going to make the shakshuka because I don't want the eggs to stick. And in this one, we're going to make the chicken because I want to sear it really nicely. This is cast iron and this is non-stick, okay? So in both cases, we are going to start with some olive oil. Both of these dishes are tomato-based recipes. So there is no chopping of onions. Your apartment or your house is not going to stink of fried onions at the end of the cooking process. So that's always a plus, right? So I've always admired how my mother-in-law has been able to use onions, like tomatoes, in her dishes and still make flavorful food rather than using onions and everything, which is pretty much the basis of all Indian cooking the way we know it, right? Good morning, Shara. How are you today? Good morning to everybody that's tuning in. We are going to make two non-vegetarian dishes. This is going to be the egg shakshuka Sindhi style, and this is going to be cardamom chicken. So I'm going to start out with the eggs. In goes some olive oil. You can use whatever oil of your choice. Ghee is also great. The first thing you need to add in is the tomatoes. Now shakshuka, the way, if it's a word that's new to you, is very Middle Eastern inspired, and Sindh, because it was closer to Central Asia and closer to the Middle East in undivided India, has a lot of influences from there. Even things like garlic, etc. are called by the same name, right? So definitely pay attention to this recipe. Also, if you have any questions or comments, drop it in the chat below. Even though I'll be busy cooking and I'm trying to monitor two screens, I will try to answer your questions. If it's something that I miss out on, definitely feel free to send me a DM so that I can respond to you at a later date, but I will definitely get to all the comments, I promise. Okay, so in go the tomatoes. I will also be adding a little bit of tomato paste or tomato puree, whatever you have. This gives a really nice color, especially if you're using tomatoes that are not like off season. So when you're making something in the winter, if you add a little bit of tomato puree, it gives it that nice tangy summer flavor, but it also keeps that vibrant color, so that's always great. Hello Faye, good afternoon. How are you today? Another tip with working with tomatoes is, as soon as you add the tomatoes, add the salt for the entire dish to this chopped tomato. What that's going to do is it's going to help to draw out all the moisture, right? I'm going to add some turmeric powder to this and some coriander seed powder. This is ground at home. I'm using a masala box. If you don't have one of these, you've got to get it. It's on my website, queenscurrykitchen.com. You can buy it with the spices, without the spices. I have turmeric, cumin seeds, coriander seed powder, paprika, Indian paprika, sea salt, homemade garam masala, and I have dry mango powder. Okay, so those are the spices that I have in here. So as soon as you put the salt, you'll see the moisture starts to get drawn out. And we're just going to give it a gentle stir. This is not like making marinara sauce. So we have to draw out the moisture, and we really have to not have it soupy. So we need to cook the tomatoes. It's not just a warming through, it's an actual cooking process. So take the back of your ladle and press it down. Just remember, the entire salt for your dish pretty much has been added at this point, right? So give it a gentle stir so that all of the tomato paste or puree is well combined with the tomatoes. Okay, so I'm gonna let this do its thing. I might need a cover for this, which is right here. Just gonna gently cover it to help steaming up the process. And now I'm gonna move over to my chicken recipe. The first thing that you need for this cardamom chicken is, of course, cardamom powder. Back in the day, they used to use fresh cardamom, and they used to just pound it in a mortar and pestle like this. So if you have one of these guys and you have some fresh green cardamom, not the black cardamom, you need the green cardamom for this. I've made a powder. I use it all the time in my chai. This is what it looks like. They're grown in India, they're grown in Guatemala. So if you live near an Indian store or Middle Eastern store, you should be able to get it. If you can't find any of the spices, definitely hit me up through a PM. I will be able to send them for you. Okay? So make sure the heat is super duper high. What we're going to do is we're going to add the cardamom powder, infuse the oil with the cardamom flavor, and drop in the chicken to sear it really nicely and get the coloring that it needs, right? So just, yeah, it's nice and hot. I'm going to take, I eyeball everything, but you can always measure it with spoons and whatever. I just never do. And when you see it sizzling, just turn the heat down to medium and gradually add all of the pieces of chicken. I'm using dark meat. You can use any kind that you want. I'm using thighs and legs, and I've cut them into smaller pieces. And for the legs, I've put gashes like this. You see these gashes so that all of the spices and the flavoring can get in there. Okay? So I'm just going to give this a quick sear. And you want to keep the flame on high. Of course, dropping the chicken in there is going to bring down the temperature of the oil, and you want to really maintain that. So, welcome. I see a lot of new people joining in. So, AM Hamir Hamza, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're tuning in from. We are making 2 Shindi dishes from my in-laws family. A cardamom chicken. The original name for this chicken curry is called Fote Bhugo Tiwan, which Fote means cardamom, Bhugo means seared, and Tiwan means meat or chicken, whatever. So this is originally done with mutton or lamb or goat, but since my mother-in-law came to America, she improvised on it and made it into a chicken recipe as well. We are not going to add any salt yet. We'll just let this sear. I still have some quantity left in here. Don't add salt, because the minute you add salt, it's going to start drawing out all the moisture from the chicken, and then you will lose the color. So one big mistake that people make is this, pile in all the salt and the spices on top of the chicken. Do not do that. If you're trying to give it some color when it's interacting with the oil or the ghee, you need to give it that time. Time to check in on this. Just give it a gentle stir. You want it to be kind of soupy, but it's not completely broken down yet. You can see there are still chunks here. We don't want that. We need to make what's called a chutney. So it should be completely smooth, and it should be very loose. That's when you know it's time to do the next step. So we have to cook this through, increase the heat, give it a gentle saute, stir it around, let it bubble up. So I'm working on both dishes at the same time. If you don't have that ability, thank you, Kamlesh, you're so sweet. Yes, so I'm making a cardamom chicken, and I'm making a shakshuka. This is the same shakshuka that you pay $16-18 in a Turkish restaurant when you go for a Mediterranean brunch. You can absolutely do it at home. It's super simple. If you see that it's bubbling and the splatters are bothering you, just definitely cover it lightly and put your flame from medium to low. Hello, Rana Shani. How are you today? Now we is watching all the people that are tuning in who are new to my page or my channel. Definitely give me a follow, give me a like, and then turn on your notifications so that whenever I go live, you will get notified. Okay, time to give this a stir. You can see the color changes on top. It becomes a little bit white. This is the time when you're just going to give it a gentle stir. And you can see all the cardamom literally sticks to the meat. Yeah, all the cardamom powder really sticks to the meat. You just have to give it that time for it to happen, right? So just give it a gentle stir. We're not trying to overcook anything. We're just trying to give it a beautiful color and seal in all the juices that come from the reaction of the high heat with the protein. Okay, so just seal in all the juices. Do not add salt at this point. Again, I'm telling you, you can make this with chicken. You can do this with mutton. You can do this with lamb. You may not be able to do it with fish because fish is a very delicate meat. You cannot even do it with shrimp because shrimp just cooks very quickly. But you can actually make a sauce separately and then probably add a delicate seafood meat to that. That might be the only option. Okay, so now pretty much all of the chicken is white. It's not pink anymore. Oh, thank you for the hearts. I'm sorry, my camera keeps acting up and it just keeps swooping down. So thank you for all the TikTok. No, not going anywhere. Yes, thank you, Kamlesh. I appreciate that. Okay, so this is pretty much white. I'm going to lift this out and I'm going to put in the next lot. You can already see that the moisture is starting to come out of the chicken, which is something that we don't want. So I'm going to lift it out very quickly and start with the next step. Okay, so because I have a large quantity, I have to cook everything the same way. And dark meat also cooks really fast. If you want something that's boneless, go ahead and do it. I just feel like when you make boneless chicken, it lacks the flavor because the marrow or the bone does not give you any flavor in the broth. In that case, I would recommend putting in a chicken cube or chicken bouillon just a little bit to enhance the flavor of your boneless chicken dishes. You may or may not want to do that. If you have chicken stock, you can use that instead of water, so that's definitely an option. I'm going to set this aside. Oh. Sorry, my camera just flew out of the... Well, I guess I'm just going to have to hold you guys right here. Okay, so time to put in the second lot of chicken right in here. I'm going to do that. The heat is on high. I am going to need to wash my hands and re-plug in this camera because I don't want my TikTok family to suffer. Okay, so in goes the chicken. Again, the heat needs to be high. And we're just going to repeat the whole process so that all of this chicken, you can still see there is some cardamom at the base of this pot. So we just want all of that cardamom to stick to the chicken. The heat is medium high. Give me a few seconds so I can actually plug this camera back on to the stand where it was. It's hard for me to see without, okay, this is good. All right. Now again, it's time to revisit our shakshuka and see how it's doing. I'm just going to refocus the Facebook camera so y'all can see. Okay, so now you can see it's pretty much warmed through. It's also quite loose, right? So it hasn't cooked. You'll know it's cooked when all of the oil comes to the top. So in any Indian food, when all of the oil skims to the top, you know that it's time to do the next step or that your curry is ready. So just give it a gentle stir. Now I'm going to go ahead and add some more spices to make it more potent. Remember, after we add the eggs, we're not going to add any more spices. So whatever seasoning, whatever taste, I'm adding a little garam masala. It's totally optional. Coriander seed powder, a little more turmeric, and some more paprika. Just to keep all the flavors in there. So the eggs pretty much tend to be bland, and if you don't add any of these spices or any of the flavoring, then it really doesn't taste that good. Coming back to the chicken, I'm just going to keep an eye on it, give it a gentle stir. And basically just going for making it white again. That's what I'm going for, okay? So this is going to keep doing its thing. Now it's time to put in the eggs. Just make sure your heat is all the way low. I will be putting 8 eggs into this. I put about 2.5 big tomatoes into this base, right? This base curry that I made. So I put about 2.5 tomatoes, large tomatoes. I will be going for about 6 to 8 eggs. Let me see. So make sure you have a big enough pan so that all the eggs are they have their own little bed of tomatoes and nothing is overlapping. It's just gonna make your dish very beautiful. And also, if you have a pretty pan, you can actually serve the dish just like this. Like if you go into restaurants and you order the shakshuka, they actually have a little tiny cast iron skillet, like an individual skillet, and they put it there. So this is pretty much what we're doing, right? If you have any questions so far, drop it in the comments. I am going to try to answer all your questions. So in go the eggs. I'm just using regular large eggs. If you're not confident about cracking the eggs directly onto the tomato base, by all means crack them in a bowl. Just make sure that the yolk does not break when you plop it in there, okay? And some people like the yolks to be runny in their dish when it's plated or served. Some people like it to be hard. My family prefers the hard cooked yolk. So I'm just going to go around in this manner and distribute all the eggs around this. The heat is all-time low because I'm just really not trying to overcook any of the eggs. You can also remove it from the heat if you want to stop the cooking process. That's totally a matter of preference. And one quick tip, if you see an eggshell that fell into the tomato, the best way to take it out is not with your hands. Just take the edge of an eggshell that's already broken and scoop it out. It's the easiest, fastest, and best way to take out an eggshell that may have plopped in when you were cooking. So I got 4 in there. I'm going to put in maybe 3 or 4 more. I'm cooking for 4 people. Right, so the heat is all-time low. There you go. I think I'll put 1 more right in the middle. So I have all these around and I'm going to put it right in the middle. So you can also serve this family style. It can serve more than 2 or 3 people depending on how big your skillet is. If you want to do individual portions, you can make it into small skillets and then finish it off in the oven and just bake off the yolks so that they'll be nice and firm when you serve them, depending on how your family likes it. Quick wash of hands, super important when you're touching raw eggs and raw chicken, right? So that's gone in. Now I'm going to increase the heat just a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and add some cilantro. You see how the eggs have already started bubbling as soon as I increase the heat to medium? Now tell me this doesn't look appetizing. When you go to a Turkish restaurant and you pay like $30 or $20 for 2 eggs, you can absolutely do this at home. You can make it ahead of time and then put it in your oven if you have friends coming for brunch. This is a really, really foolproof recipe. You don't need a whole lot of cooking skills. I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit of salt, enough for the eggs. So just make sure the yolks are nicely salted. Eggs tend to be a salty food by default. So be careful when you're sprinkling salt on it. Okay, just give it a gentle shake. I'm also going to go in and help this along a little bit by just releasing it from the sides to make sure that the whites are going to be evenly cooked. So I'm going to just zhuzh it around near the yolks without disturbing the yolks. This is especially going to be helpful if you want the yolks to be soft, right? So you want the whites to cook, but you don't want the yolks to overcook. So this is really helpful. You just spread it out a little bit so that there is room and they get enmeshed with the bed of tomato sauce that you just made. All right, I've used cilantro, but I guess if you're doing it the Middle Eastern way, you can use parsley, you can use basil, whatever you got. My mother-in-law always used cilantro. So I'm just gonna clean out the sides. This is a silicone spatula that I have, which is especially nice with non-stick stuff. It doesn't scratch the surface. Now I'm gonna turn my heat to medium-low and I will put a cover on this. This is going to do its thing. I don't need to give it any more attention. Hello, Nalini. How are you today? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch pots so that you can see this one better. This is just going to go on autopilot for now, right? So this is going to be on medium-high. This second batch of chicken is already good to go. It's pretty much white all over. So I'm going to remove this. I've actually made this with ghee and it tastes absolutely phenomenal. Like I think olive oil does not even come close to the taste that ghee offers, and it just absolutely tastes phenomenal with olive oil. So if it's with ghee, so if it's something that you're trying to consider, you want to add some more oomph to your chicken dish, definitely consider making it with ghee. I personally feel like all the non-vegetarian dishes taste really good when you make them with ghee. Okay, so just gonna scoop out. You can see that the chicken starts to release moisture, which is not what we're going for. So don't overcook this chicken. You still want it to be moist, not rubbery. Thankfully, it's chicken thighs, so it's not going to become chewy. It'll be nice and moist. But this little sear that you give it actually helps to retain the juices and keep the chicken moist. So you can see it's all just white at this point. So it's chicken and cardamom just, in love with each other and robed with each other. That's what's going on. Now I have a little bit of moisture left in the pan, which I'm going to increase my heat and evaporate that. So we will come down into it with the tomatoes. Good morning, Ruby. How are you? So as you see these bubbles, you know that the water is evaporating. Sorry for this clanky noise. Put this away, change my ladle. Anything in general that you want to ask about Indian food, anything in specific that you have related to this recipe, definitely drop it in the comments below. I'm here for it. I'm going to try to answer your questions. I also teach Indian cooking, and there's a bunch of ebooks on my website that you can download and start your Indian food journey, start your cooking journey to Indian food. It's an instant download. You can go to the website queenscurrykitchen.com and download the ebooks. You can download the free chana masala recipe. You can also order the masala box with the spices. You can order the masala chai. All of that is done for you, honey. So anything that you can do to get more flavor in your life, I take care of that. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and add just a tad bit more oil. Another fresh dose of cardamom to infuse the oil. And now in goes all of these tomatoes. These are about 3 tomatoes. It's all going to go in. So this is like a very warming, comforting kind of a curry that we do, especially in the winter time. And it's not supposed to be a thick gravy. It's just supposed to be a very tomatoey, brothy, cardamom-ish gravy. And it's supposed to be very comforting, especially when the winter comes around, when it's, the days are short and the nights are long. You want to have something that's comforting and soothing. And this is the perfect dish for that, okay? I'm going to give you a sneak peek into how the shakshuka is coming along. But first, let's just add some tomato puree to this. We'll get a little more tomato puree because I need to create the broth with that flavor. You can use tomato paste or puree, whatever you have is fine. Just get it in there. Again, the tip with the tomatoes, every time you use something with just a tomato or you're making a gravy with tomatoes, add the entire salt for the entire dish to that tomato. It's going to help to cook it faster. It's going to draw out all the moisture. Right? Just give it a gentle stir. So now in this pan, we have oil, we have cardamom, we have tomatoes. I cannot tell you, this cardamom, as soon as it hits the oil, it has such a comforting aroma. You have no idea. And I just made my chai with my cardamom powder. So cardamom is a huge part of our flavor profile as Indians. We use it a lot. In sweets, in savories, we use it in everything. Okay? So this has happened. Now I'm going to go ahead and add the salt to help pull out all of the moisture from these tomatoes and help them to cook nicely. I'm using sea salt. You can use any salt of your choice. I will give you an important tip about the regular table salt that is used. Right? Just give me 1 second. Let me finish this. I added coriander seed powder and I'm adding Kashmiri chili powder, which is paprika. It gives it a nice red color. A hint of garam masala, which is a combination of cloves, cinnamon, garlic, cloves, cinnamon, cumin, black pepper, all of that stuff is in there, okay? So now this is just going to cook down. And when it's completely cooked down to the point where the oil is released, I will add back the chicken, I will add the water, and then cook it in the broth. That's the way to do this, okay? Now, let me bring you back into the shakshuka. Let me get a knife first. Alright, this cover needs to go to this guy now. Alrighty. Okay, so here's what the shakshuka is looking like right now. If you want to check the yolks are cooked or not, you just go in there and poke it with a knife. You see the knife is still got, hello Sona, how are you? The knife still has a little bit of the runniness of the yolk. You can do two things. You can either set it back on the stove and allow it to cook in residual heat and harden up the yolks, which is how my family likes it. Or you can just continue to cook it for a few more seconds. Give it a gentle shake so you know that it's not stuck to the pan. Mine's a good non-stick pan. I got it off of Amazon. If you'd like the link, just drop me a comment. I'll share the link with you. Feel free to send some stars to this girl of yours so I can keep creating and sharing more videos with you. Alright, so I'm going to just set it back on the stove for a few more minutes so that all of the yolks can be firm. Just cleaned up my knife so I can test it again in a few moments. Okay. Hello, Savvy. How are you today? It's good to see you here. Okay. I'm going to give it another stir. You can see gradually the oil droplets are going to start surfacing to the top. As you sear this tomato more and more, you'll see the oil droplets coming to the top. And that's a good sign. The color is also going to be deeper than when you started because now these are kind of roasting and cooking at the same time. So just give it a gentle stir. If you feel like you want to add your cilantro at this point, you can. If you want to save it for the finale, that's totally up to you. Yes, shakshuka is really, it's so delicious. I just absolutely love it. It's weird that I make it at home too, but when I go to a restaurant, like on my birthday, we went to a Turkish brunch. Honey, we had to have the shakshuka. Like, what is life without a shakshuka? So I'd been eating it for 20-something years without even knowing that it was shakshuka. So when I saw it in Middle Eastern restaurant menus, or I saw them on YouTube, other people making it, I was like, wait, that's what my mother-in-law makes, you know. But she never calls it that. She calls it ande ji bhaji. Ande means eggs, ji means off, and bhaji means curry or vegetable, right? So dish made with eggs, that's what it means. Literally translates to that. Hi Bharti, how are you doing today? Alright, so this curry is going to simmer for a bit. I'm going to wait for all of the oil to come to the top. The shakshuka is pretty much done. I've turned it off. You just have to give it a final finishing of either red pepper flakes or crushed black pepper. Both are equally good as a final garnish. The tomatoes here are cooking beautifully. This is what I want. I'm going to set my kettle to boil some water so that I'll have it ready to make the broth. If only the kettle was always full when I needed it, that would be nice, but it's not. I'm ready to take some questions. If you want to drop any questions in the comments, I will be happy to take the questions because now I can actually focus on the screen instead of focusing on the pan. So this is my kettle. I'm going to put it to boil so I can add hot water to my chicken curry. You can use cold water as well, but I feel like it drops the temperature of the whole dish and that's not fun. Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, the shakshuka is pretty much done. If anybody wants to get in there, Savvy, can you take a screenshot for me, please? This is the shakshuka. I'm gonna hit it with some more cilantro, and then that's what we are going to eat tonight. Yeah, it pairs really nicely with sourdough bread. It pairs really nicely with rotis and parathas. So this is our shakshuka. For all the people wondering, why should I go to a restaurant and pay $30? This is less than $5 that I spent on making this, right? So just a little bit of time and planning ahead, especially on a weekend when you don't want to sit there and be frying onions. This is what you do. Okay, so this tomato curry is coming together beautifully. I can smell the tanginess of the tomatoes along with the earthiness of the cardamom. The cilantro doesn't really impart any flavor at this point, but it just adds a beautiful color to it. The paprika actually enhances the redness of this tomato curry. I'm going to keep stirring it, and I will wait for it to cook down so that all of the oil comes to the top. Now, when you make this with mutton or lamb or goat, which is something that really takes a long time to cook, you don't even have to overcook the tomatoes. My mother-in-law would just fry the mutton and then add these chopped tomatoes on top, give it a few sears, and then she would just close her pressure cooker and have it whistle out. So that's what she would do, because mutton does not fall apart with that much cooking time. When you do it with chicken, it's a little more delicate, so you don't want the chicken to disintegrate, and so you have to cook down the tomatoes and then add back the chicken. So that's pretty much the logic in here. If you like shrimp or fish, I think that would be the same technique. You would just have to cook it further so that nothing would fall apart or disintegrate when the broth is bubbling. Okay, so David Kumar, David, welcome. Kwa Yi Win, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Good afternoon, hello, and welcome. So many people on TikTok tuned in right now, so I'm just going to take a minute and acknowledge all of you. CJ Johnson, Lynn Lane, SV Jeldwinob, I'm sorry if I'm messing up your name. Melbug, Sweet Pea, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this live. We are making a cardamom chicken curry recipe that comes from my mother-in-law's arsenal. She is Shindi, and so is my husband's family, and this is something that they like to eat. She improvised it from being a goat or a mutton based curry to being a chicken based curry, because chicken was just easily available when she first came here in the 80s. She could go to the supermarket herself and buy it instead of having to depend on the men of the house, who would either drive her there to the butcher or help her find mutton or goat. So this is an improvised recipe. Again, if you're doing this with mutton or goat or lamb, which can withstand high temperatures and high cooking, you don't have to sear the sauce down to this extent. You can actually just add it right after you've seared the meat in the ghee or the oil, okay? So, Sazan Kumar, welcome. Riyamuddin, welcome. Babaji, welcome to everybody. If you have any questions about this recipe, drop it in the chat below. And if you have any questions specific to Indian cooking in general, just drop it in the chat below. If you're not following this page, do that. And turn on your notifications so you'll get a live notification whenever I'm online, okay? This is the shakshuka that we just made. It's eggs and tomatoes. We just finished making that. Cool Wash, Jose Garza, thank you everybody for all the sweet comments and the hearts and the likes that are going up. Thank you. Anwar Hussain, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on wherever you're tuning in from, right? Another word of caution, do not wear white clothes when you're working with the tomato-based sauce. Okay, now you see that the oil is separating from the sides of this pan. This is a cast iron pan. If you use a non-stick pan, it might happen sooner, right? So here, all of the oil is skimming to the top, and you'll see that the tomato is completely reduced. It was chopped, but you can barely see any texture at this point. Thank you for the likes and the hearts. I appreciate that. Fope, thank you so much. I'm just going to cook this down even more. And then now is the time to add back the chicken, okay? So all of this chicken goes in, and you'll see there are some juices. Like when you let the chicken rest, you see all these juices that are falling into the pan. That's where all your flavor is, especially if you're using something that's on the bone. Honey, this is gold. Like all of this juice that's dripping in from letting your chicken rest, this is gold. So even when you're barbecuing or grilling something or smoking something, don't serve it right away. Let it rest after it comes off the heat. The juices that get sealed and the juices that get released, that's liquid gold. You don't want to waste that, okay? So there you go. Now is the time to go in very gently and just toss everything together. Welcome, Shiv Kumar. How are you today? Just gonna lift from the bottom and then flip the top. You don't want to go in there breaking it or attacking it. You just lift from the bottom and flip. Lift at the bottom and flip to the top. Just make sure everything is nicely coated with the sauce that you just created. Correct? Okay. There you go. There you go. Just beautiful. Very gentle. This chicken is not cooked yet. It just has a little bit of color on the outside. It's not cooked. It's going to now get poached when I add liquid to this, and I'll adjust my seasonings to make sure that it's nice and flavorful, okay? Khurshid Alam, welcome to Queen's Curry Kitchen. I appreciate each and every one of you. Feel free to follow this page, share this like with your friends and family. We also have a Facebook group called the Indian Food Lovers or Curry Lovers. Definitely feel free to join that group. Tomorrow I'm going to go live in that group, and we will be talking about a meal prep and how it can save your life, how it can enhance your life, it can save you money, it can save you time. We will be talking about meal prep, 12 o'clock That means 12 noon EST, New York time. Okay, so this is completely ready for the next step. You can see all of the sauce has been soaked up by the chicken. It's really nicely enrobed. Now I'm going to grab the kettle with hot water. And just add a little bit. So it's supposed to be very soupy and brothy. Just add it along the sides and cover the whole chicken with this. Now this almost creates like a poaching liquid for the chicken. So it's going to be super moist. It's going to be falling off the bone, but it's not going to break because you're going to keep an eye on it, right? So I don't really pressure cook my chicken because I feel like if you pressure cook it, then it just falls apart and you have no control over it. Plus it has high heat. You can't control it once the pressure starts to build up. So I've added the hot water. I'm going to adjust my seasoning. I'm seeing so many of you on my live, so I just wanted to take a minute and thank each and every one of you for tuning in. It really means a lot. I've been missing for a while, so I appreciate that you took the time and you're hanging out with me in my kitchen today. Okay, so I'm just going to nudge this, bringing the camera back. And if you want to send some stars on Facebook, feel free to do that. DB Queen, welcome. Maya Lutapa, welcome, welcome. Just gonna nudge it a little bit to make sure that the liquid got into all of the air pockets. And you see this beautiful red-orange color that you see? This is going to be the color of your broth and your soup that you're going to slurp. You can eat this with rice. Some people just eat it just like that, without any rice, without any rotis. And it still tastes good. Okay, so now I'm going to just make sure that all of the chicken pockets inside have got the liquid. The chicken is pretty much well immersed in this broth. Time to add a little bit more of cilantro. No such thing as too much cilantro. And a final pinch of cardamom. So you have cardamom inside, you have cardamom in the middle, and you have cardamom on top, right? Now I'm going to go ahead and check the seasoning. Just to make sure that it's as flavorful as I'd like it to be. So just pick it up from wherever it's bubbling. Let's taste this thing and see if it's what it needs, right? Not because I made it. It's tangy. It's got that earthy fragrance of cardamom. I think it needs a little bit more salt to balance out the tanginess of the tomatoes. So I'm going to add a little more salt. And I will add a little more coriander seed powder for flavoring. Right? I just freshly ground it, but if you order it on my website, you will get it in a packet that completely fits the ramekin. So if you haven't got one of your masala boxes, you need to get these from my website, queenscurrykitchen.com. It comes with all of these spices. You can order it with or without the spices. It comes like this. The advantage of having a masala box is that then you can prevent all of your other large bulk storage spices from getting moisture and air into them. So just take out what you need for the few days and keep this covered. That way all of your other spices or the big jars will stay out of moisture and stay in a cool, dark place. When you're ready to use them, they will be quite potent, okay? So that's the reason why we use masala boxes. And if you don't have one of these, you need to go to my website, queenscurrykitchen.com. Okay, coming back to this, it's bubbling away really nicely, and that's basically what we're trying to go for. Dhamia Maftoon, welcome to the Queen's Curry Kitchen. Bob Dorji, welcome, welcome. SD Kasab, Sheikh Saad, welcome to the Queen's Curry Kitchen. We are making cardamom chicken, and we have just finished making the shakshuka. I will be finishing off this with red pepper flakes or black pepper, freshly ground black pepper, and that's going to give it the final finishing touch. That's our live for today. If you have any questions or if you have any comments about what you saw, if you have any questions about Indian food in general, drop it in the comments below. This chicken curry is going to bubble for a few moments, and I will actually pierce the chicken with a knife to make sure that it's well cooked. After which I will turn off the heat till all of the oil skims to the top, and then I will turn off the stove, right? So whenever you cook with a little bit of oil or a lot of oil, the best way to draw out all of the oil is once your vegetable or meat is cooked, you put a cover on top, and then you turn the heat all the way to its lowest setting and you let it stay there for about 4 to 5 minutes, you'll see that all of the oil actually comes to the top. So this is especially great if you're watching the amount of oil that's going into your food, and you know Indian food tends to be very rich, so we add a lot of oil in the beginning, then it floats to the top and we consume it. So instead of doing that, there's two things that you can do. One, either put your dish in the fridge, so all of the oil will solidify and you can just skim it out. You can use that same oil to cook more food down the road, or you can cover it up, and then when the oil comes to the top, just separate it out. Take a scoop and separate it out, and then eat your dish without that extra oil. Sometimes the oil is needed for searing, and sometimes, you know, it's something that we just feel like that's where the taste is. That's not where the taste is, that's where the cholesterol is. So I was going to mention something about oils, about salt. So let me talk about salt. When you buy regular table salt, people say, oh, you know what, so and so has high cholesterol, so I have to watch the oil intake, I have to watch this, I have to watch that. I'm going to tell you the bitter truth about cholesterol and clogged arteries. And this is something I learned from a phenomenal naturopath called Barbara O'Neill. She's Australian and she has a lot of live videos, and she also wrote many books on health and wellness. Her name is Barbara O'Neill. So I'm going to tell you something about what when she talks about salt, what does she say? She says that when we have clogged arteries, it's not because of the oil that we were consuming, and it's not because we have fat in our blood that we have clogged arteries. What happens is when you consume commercially made table salt, like iodized salt or whatever brand you have, right? The ones that come in the red box. I'm not going to take any names, but you know which ones they are. When you consume those kind of salts in your food, what that does is that has really tiny silicate particles or silica particles, which is actually mimics the texture of shards of glass in your bloodstream. So when you eat food made with that salt, it runs through your blood, right? Everything gets converted to blood. It runs through your bloodstream, and then it tears the sides of your arteries, because it's like a shard of glass moving through soft tissue, right? So if you take glass and you do that, what is it going to do? It's going to scratch your surface. So it does the same thing to our internal arteries. Hello, oh my God, Anjuji, good morning. So that's what it does. And so the fat in our body goes to repair those scratches or cracks or whatever you want to call them in our arteries. That fat then deposits itself to fill the holes or fill the cracks. And so when they catch it, so it's called plaque, and it just deposits itself because your body is trying to prevent the leakage from happening from your arteries. So it's because of the salt, it's not because of the fat. The fat actually goes there to stop the blockage. It's like, you know, when you're bleeding, you put a band-aid or you put a cotton compress. It's literally what the fat in your body does at that time. But by the time the heart starts pumping or you start feeling breathlessness, then you go to the doctor, they do your diagnostics and they tell you, oh, your arteries are clogged, we have to do this surgery and that surgery, we have to do angioplasty, angiography, bypass surgery, whatever, open heart surgery, whatever. They tell you all of that, but it's not actually the fat in your food, it's actually the kind of salt that you've been consuming. So if you eat out a lot, they are not using sea salt, they are not using they're not using Himalayan pink salt, they're not using any of that salt, right? So be very careful when you eat out, especially all the high sodium things that you eat. So go for sea salt. This is sea salt, right? So do sea salt or do Himalayan pink salt. The only disadvantage with Himalayan pink salt is that you will not get any iodine from your salt, so you might have to do a supplement for that. But it'll save your heart in the long run. It'll save your arteries from getting clogged. So if when I first heard this theory, I really thought about it. I was like, oh my God, that is mind-blowing. I would have never thought that there was a connection. So it's not the oils or the fats that you're using. Of course, we don't need too much fat in our food nowadays because we don't have that kind of a lifestyle where we're always physically active. But be mindful of the kind of salt that you're consuming, because that eventually then scratches the insides. Yes, Kamlesh ji, be very careful what kind of salt you're using. It's got a lot to do with the clogged artery effect that we see at the end of the time when the doctor tells us, oh, your arteries are blocked. It's not the fat. The fat is your friend because it goes in there to plug in the holes or plug in the scratches that have been caused by the silica moving from. Okay, so when you, very good question, Anjuji. So there's a question, she says, what do you have to see when you buy salt? When you buy salt, go for something that's natural. So it should say, you look at the contents, it should just say salt or sea salt or something, right? When you see a whole bunch of other things next to salt that you cannot pronounce or read, that means there's a lot of chemicals in the salt, there's a lot of silicates in the salt, you don't need that. So buy either sea salt or then buy the Himalayan pink salt. Both are good. In the Indian culture, there is also called something called sendha namak, which is great because it's rock salt. So all of those have